So here we go, the start of our course. And before we can even think about making cocktails, we need to understand the cocktail equipment that we will need to make them and how to use all those pieces. So I'm going to take you through one at a time. Some will seem obvious, but sometimes we can point out things that are right in front of us and we don't really think about. So the first thing, which should be obvious to you all, is a knife. Now it's really handy to have a straight edge sharp knife, not too big but definitely not too small. The straight edge is really important because we do a lot of chopping, we do a lot of cutting, and if you have a serrated knife it starts to get a little bit messy. So I'd recommend something like that, about 5 to 6 inches long and nice and sharp. So that's the first thing. Let's put that to the side. The second thing is this. This is a pourer. Now, not all of you have these, and that's fine. But if you do have these are quite an advantage when it comes to actually pouring from a bottle. They help you with a controlled, flowing pour, and one that you can start and stop really easily. So let me just demonstrate that to you. So I'm going to take this bottle of vodka, which actually is not a full bottle of vodka because this has seen some action, and I'm going to put this in the top of the bottle. And that means that when I come to pour, I can actually throw the bottle right up high, and in order to stop the pour, I can just drop my wrist and it will stop it dead. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to pour into this jigger now, and just by dropping my wrist, it stops the pour, and I have my measure. So these little taper, single pour, flow pours, as we call them, they're really handy, they're very easy to get hold of. I will give you links for where you can get all of this equipment if you don't already have it. And I would definitely suggest it's worth buying a few of these if you don't have them yet. So let me put this to the side, and let's talk about this, which I'm going to put down for a second. And this is our jigger, our measure, our thimble. This is a double-sided one. So I've got a 25mm measure on this side, and I've got a 50mm measure on the other side. So I can use this for pretty much every cocktail that we're going to make throughout this course. So you fill to the line, and then you pour in to your receptacle. In this case, it's going to be the bottom half of our Boston shaker. And that is the next piece of equipment that I want to look at. So there are two types of cocktail shaker that you can use when making drinks. One is the 3-piece shaker, which is all metal and has a body like this, then has a lid that goes on top of that with a hole in the top and a strainer, and then a cap that goes on top of that. Now those are really domestic pieces of equipment, and it doesn't matter whether you're making these drinks at home or whether you're making them professionally in a bar, you should be using these. They give a little bit more theatre, a little bit more professionalism, and you know what, they're also easier to use as well. So this one is the 2-piece Boston shaker. It's made up of a larger tin and a slightly smaller glass. And what we do is when we're making cocktails, we put all the ingredients first of all into the glass. We then add the ice, and then we put the tin on top of the glass. So let me just add some ice to the vodka that we put in here. And I'm going to show you how we try to put these together. So you put this the other way up, you press it down on top, and you try to get a straight edge down one side. And if you have that straight edge, you can give it a tap, and that will create an airlock and seal it, or you don't even have to tap. Sometimes you can just give it a press and squeeze it. So now we're ready to shake. But whenever you shake, you turn the shaker up the other way so that the glass is facing back when you shake it. And the idea of that is that if in any circumstance there is a break in the airlock and it starts to leak, it means in a bar, while you're shaking, you're not going to send alcohol all over your customers. And in your own home while you're shaking, you're not going to send it out all over your friends and your guests. So we shake like so. And the reason behind shaking is this. 1 is to mix up the drink. 2 is to chill the drink. And if you look at the frosting on the outside of there, you can see how cold that's got. And finally, we shake cocktails also to slightly dilute them. In other words, what we're doing is we're putting water into them. By that aggressive motion against the ice, a lot of the ice turns to water. That's why when we shake, it should be fast and hard but short. If you shake for too long, you put far too much water, and we will talk about that as we go through the cocktails. So this is the next stage of using one of these, the Boston shaker. It's opening it. And opening it is always a bit of a problem for people who have never opened it before. It's a bit like riding a bike. It takes a while to get it, but once you got it, you got it. And the idea is this. is that in order to open it, because now I can't open it, we need to break the airlock here. And you can see where the frosting ends, just there, and the warm bit of metal starts. That's the line that the glass is sitting inside. And what we want to do is we want to tap the metal with one hand here, holding it around the top of the tin, and the other hand here we want to tap the metal just above that line. And what that would do is it would just bend it imperceptibly. You wouldn't be able to see it, but it breaks it enough for the airlock to break. And if you do it right in the right place, which is just below where the metal touches the glass, so you want to move in, we call this the corner of the smile here. You move into that point about an inch or so in, and you give it a tap, and they come apart. Trust me, if you get that the first time, having never used these, congratulations. If you struggle with it, just relax, keep at it. Eventually you find what we call the sweet spot. But don't go banging away with your hand, because if you get a little bit too aggressive, you end up bruising your hand. So just should be a nice tap and it will pop. If it doesn't, you need to change your point. Practice. Practice makes perfect. Okay, so that is our Boston shaker. Interestingly, what you've noticed is although I started by putting the ingredients into the glass, actually when we come to serve the drink, all the ingredients have ended up in the tin, which is where we want them. So let's move that across. I'm going to bring this glass into place, and I'm going to show you this next piece of equipment. And this is our strainer. This is called a Hawthorne strainer. In fact, it's called a spring-loaded Hawthorne strainer. In fact, if you want to get really picky about it, this is called a 2-pronged spring-loaded Hawthorne strainer. And you can get 4 prongs as well, just in case you want to get really excited. What we do is we put it inside the mouth of the tin. We use one finger to hold it in place, and the rest of our hand to grab around the tin so that we can now hold the ice in the shaker and dispense the drink, just like so. This way, all the ice that I've shaken stays inside, and I can pour a drink as we call straight up, with no ice in it. Sometimes with drinks you get very little ice chips in there, fine ice chips which are left over from shaking the ice. And in that case you would double strain. In other words, you would strain from this and through what looks like a little tea strainer as well. But to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of double straining. I think it's a modern thing to make it seem slightly more mysterious, a bit more sort of rocket science if you like, but I actually feel it takes a little bit of life out of the drinks. It's not something I personally will be recommending to you. Let's move our drink to the side, which by the way, remember, is just vodka in there, and show you 2 last bits of equipment. One is the pestle, and the other one is the bar spoon. So the pestle does what it says on the tin. If you have a mortar and pestle at home, this is what it's for. We use this for crushing ingredients in our cocktails. In this course, we'll be squeezing some mint to release the oils. We'll be crushing limes to get the oils and the juices out of those. So a pestle is very useful. And then finally, the bar spoon. And this is a multi-skilled piece of equipment, which sounds like a strange way to talk about a spoon, but actually it's quite handy really. So first of all, you've got the spoon at the end. Now the spoon is a spoon, so you can use it for, I don't know, spooning in sugar, for example. But also the size of these spoons, regardless of who's made your spoon, is always 5 ml. So if you're trying to measure out small amounts of liquor, you can just measure it into the spoon and that would be 5 ml. Then you've got this little twist on here, and most of them have a twist. And a twist is really handy if you're doing layered cocktails, so shots, for example, like B-52s you might have heard of. And what you do is you take your pour spout and you put the pour spout against the neck and you dribble it on to the spiral. And the spiral holds the liquor as it feeds it right the way down the neck, and then if you get the little disc in place, it will then disperse onto the surface of what you're trying to layer. We're not actually layering any cocktails in this course, that will be a future course, but it's useful to know what that's for. Then you have this disc on the end, and the disc is for a number of things. One is for crushing things. So whereas the pestle we would use for muddling limes or fruit, pineapple, that sort of stuff, you wouldn't use the disc for that, but you might use it to break down bitters and sugar, which we will do in this course. The other thing about the disc is it's very handy for stirring. So many of our cocktails are stirred, and funnily enough, the spoon is slightly awkward for stirring, whereas the disc is much smoother, so we use it for that. So there we go. There's our pieces of equipment. It's really handy that you have them. If you don't already have them, our links will show you where to get them, and we can sort out arrangements for you where you get good prices on them. But I would suggest if you're passionate about cocktails, it's worth having at least these so that we can progress on our course, which I will see you on in a second.